Hello and welcome back to another Barn Automotive YouTube video. And in this episode, you will be able to follow along with how I remove the original diesel engine and transmission from the Defender. So let's cut to the work.
First up is removing the hood. This will give me more access and better light to see what I'm doing in the engine bay.
What I am doing here is removing the radiator, intercooler and AC cooler, or condenser, whatever you want to call it, just to give myself more access to get everything undone in the engine bay. It makes everything a lot easier if all the bits here are out the way and I can just kind of step in the engine bay and get to all the bits that I need to disconnect instead of leaning over the fenders or over the front. So this is what I'm working on now. After this, I will move on to disconnecting all the auxiliaries of the engine. So all the little pipes and bits that will be connected to the car, they'll come off the engine so that that's able to be lifted out. And then after that, I will move on to removing the transmission from the engine under the car, just so that it's easier to lift the engine out. I could lift them out as one from above, but it just avoids me knocking anything or damaging anything with the transmission as it comes out above.
After removing the radiator and condenser, I then removed all the lines that connected them to the engine. Here I am removing the ECU and the wiring from the body. Then I move on to removing the throttle body and intake. I didn't really need to remove this, but this just gave me better access to see whether everything was disconnected on the left hand side of the engine.
Okay, that is essentially now everything removed from the engine that would need to be in order to lift it out. There's two things left that are the fuel lines and the downpipe to the manifold, but I can get both of those from underneath the car. So I will get them, and then I'm going to move straight on to removing the gearbox and all the essential components around that. So I'll start with removing the drive shafts from the gearbox, and then drop the gearbox out. So we are under the car now, removing the rear drive shaft, and there is one issue. And that is someone has had a very good go at these bolts with what I assume an open neck spanner or something, and just rounded the heads of all of them off. So it makes it a lot more difficult to get them out, but not impossible. So what I'll do is I'll drive a swan neck spanner down onto, as far as possible, onto the bottom of that nut and try and wrench it off that way. You have more chance of getting it off with a closed head spanner rather than an open one, and I can't fit a normal socket over that because the drive shaft itself, the coupling link, is in the way. So it'll be a swan neck spanner and a hammer and maybe a punch to drive it on, and then they should come off. So they're not done up super tight. It's just the fact that someone's had a go at them before and rounded them off that makes them more difficult to get off. But with a swan neck, you can get around the couple. You have plenty of room, and you're not going to round it off because it's a closed head. So really the only part left to grip was the very bottom of this nut.
There are 4 nuts total either end of the drive shaft in order to remove this.
Now that the rear drive shaft is loose, I will loosen up the front drive shaft, and after that it will be disconnecting the mounts and the gearbox from the engines. Now I'm at the point on removing the gearbox where all I need to do is undo the mounting points that hold it to the chassis. But before doing that, I'm going to remove the exhaust, the rear section, just so that A, it needs to come off because it's not going back on, and B, then it's just out the way. It's not really like very much in the way, but it just makes it a little bit easier and gives me more room. Yeah, back here I'm not even going to try and undo these nuts, A, because it's not going back on, so all I'm going to do is cut it off, because that is so, maybe I can show you, that section there is so rusted that on the other side there's nothing left of those nuts, so I'm not even going to attempt or waste my time to take them off. I'm just going to cut it off there, slide it off the hangers, and then remove the rest of the exhaust.
At this point I have removed the transmission mounts, and I can slowly start to lower the transmission on jacks. There are a couple other bits that I need to disconnect still, like the earthing point and the clutch cabling. Once these were off, I could then continue to lower it while sliding it backwards, and it will come loose from the engine.
That is the original Defender transmission now out the car, and it was a relatively straightforward job. The only thing that I would have done differently is I should have really done it on the ramp with the transmission stand. That would have made life a hell of a lot easier doing it like that instead of doing it on my back. But it's done. Next stage is to now pull the engine out from above, and then we are essentially ready there. I'll clean up under the chassis and in the engine bay, degrease everything, get all the shit and muck out, make it look like new, and then we're ready for all the new parts to go in.
Now I slide the engine crane into place and connect it to the straps that are attached to the lift points on the engine. It's at this point I realise I still need to disconnect the power steering lines from the pump, and then the engine will lift free.
That is it for the removal process of the engine and transmission. And up next on this project, I will be showing you how I fit the exterior 6-point roll cage to the outside of the car. Now this thing was like adult Lego, and it took some patience to get it done, but I got there. And for now, that is it. I hope you enjoyed following along with this phase of the project, and I will see you in the next Barn Automotive YouTube video.